Hello, RP people, and welcome back to another episode of Role-Playing as Smart People, the podcast where we pretend to know what we're talking about when it comes to all things tabletop. My name is Santa, and thanks for tuning in again today. Joining me as always, I got Scott W. and Mr. Finder, and a special guest. Say hello to Jason Graham, who is supposedly wanted by the FBI. Hello, guys.
Hey, Jason Graham.
Holy cow! I didn't believe you. I can't believe you said that, Santa.
Well, you said that you weren't, and whenever someone says
right.
that,
I'm not.
That is fair.
It's a lie when they say they're not, because who brings that up? That's just too suspect.
That's right. No, indeed, I don't believe I am, but who knows now, right?
Yeah. Now the algorithm has it. It's like, wait, what did they say?
Oh, I can see it now. It'll show up on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted just because. That's funny.
I mean, I assume they're already flipping out every once in a while as I'm designing a new game. Like, hey, what's he searching now? Holy shit, no.
Yeah, right, yeah. You want to be very careful with that, Scott, because what you type in starts showing up in the algorithm. That's right.
Exactly. I feel bad for him just for video games, because how many times, I've searched something, it's like, I put in the name of the game, and then I write bombs. I'm like,
Right?
And then I think to myself, that could probably put me on a list.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Like Splinter Cell, how to breach the NSA's outer perimeter.
Right. Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, that's like looking up for this S&W game that I'm preparing. Yeah. The Savage Worlds game that I'm preparing. Yeah. I'm looking up Nazis and Vichy Swall, and it's like, fortunately it's old data. It's pre-50s. It's old World War II data, so I figured it's not a big deal. But
yeah,
got to be careful what you type in.
No, that game, the setup for that game, just what you had on the screen, that shit looks dope.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I hope it's going to be fun, right? Yeah. Now, it'll be fascinating because I really dig it. Number one, the game the other night, Scott, brilliant. But I was thinking today, I want this to be this kind of tight, a little more methodical, a little more, and I don't know if you can do it. I have a feeling the way Savage Worlds is going to, I don't know if you want to restrain the dice, right? I don't know if you want to restrain that, it just lends itself to pulp. So it's going to be fascinating to see how quickly the game turns pulp.
So if your game is more, it's going to be kind of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, right?
To some degree, yeah.
So I would advise, and Rich is he's our expert for Savage Worlds.
Okay.
Professionally. I would say use kind of like we were doing with the raises, making those matter in your investigations and
right
and stuff. Yeah, that way you don't got to worry about anything else, and you can kind of have that almost a noir feel to it, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for, right? I'm thinking black and white, old espionage film. They won't even have a lot of gear, right? I mean, this guy's behind enemy lines. The resistance may have some weapons, but he's not gonna parachute into France with a whole lot of gear.
And depending on how deadly you want it, if you want to make the bullets matter without worrying about the zaniness of the dice, just use a setting rule, gritty damage.
Now is that in this edition?
Yeah, it's in the core book.
I haven't seen it yet in the rules. Oh, that's sweet. Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of the neat thing about Savage Worlds, like you said.
So I'll grit it up. I'll warn them that I'm making this a little more gritty. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
And to anyone who's curious, Scott actually ran a game for Jason on his channel. What's your channel called again, Jason?
It's Roleplay Café, Dell and I's channel. Technically, it's Dell's channel, but I produce a lot of stuff for it, and we do all of our actual play stuff there, and we do all of our game development conversations there, and we run our play test stuff for our game development there. So, but it was Dell's channel originally, so I'm part of it, but it's Dell's channel. Roleplay Cafe.
Nice.
It's a good time.
So, out of curiosity, Jason, how did you get into tabletop before we get into our theme of this episode? Because I think it might work out well.
Okay. Gosh, where do I start? I was 8 years old. Going through my middle brother's closet in the basement, found a Ouija board and Holmes D&D, and being the 8-year-old little brother I was, I took those upstairs to my room, and we started having fun with the Ouija board and Holmes Dungeons and Dragons, 1978. We tried to figure it out. I wasn't that sophisticated. I mean, by the time I was 10, I was running Moldvay homes in Moldvay for all the guys in the neighborhood. So I started at 8, I guess 9, but I really wasn't paying close attention to what the rule book said until I was 50 years old. No, no. I started paying closer attention to the rule books in my 30s, but prior to that, I basically just used it as, hey guys, make some characters, and then did whatever I wanted to when it came down to it. So, but Dungeons and Dragons, Moldvay, Mincer, that was our go-to. But we played a lot of things. Top Secret, the first edition of Top Secret, is still one of my favorite games of all time. We played a lot of that. We had Chill, we had Boot Hill, we had, if TSR made it, we bought it. But everything was TSR for us for the most part. We didn't step out and try MERP. We didn't step out and try what was it, Paranoia or something back in the day. I
Yeah,
can't remember.
Yeah.
Star Wars, the initial D6 Star Wars. We all looked at that and laughed, because we were D20 heads, and if it didn't look like D&D, I'm talking junior high, high school.
Yep.
If it didn't look like Dungeons and Dragons, we'd scratch our heads and go, "What the hell is this?" And it would go in the no buy section. So we did. There's a lot of stuff we did not play, but 90% of it was Dungeons and Dragons basic, and we would just I would add stuff to it, and they could go on and on if they survived. But rarely do they survive beyond level 7 or 9. And then we did have that expert set, and then we played a lot of Top Secret. That was like how we took a break from D&D, was Top Secret. Yeah.
So did you watch the movie Cloak and Dagger?
Cloak and Dagger. I don't think I've ever seen that. Which one is that?
That's the one with the kid from E.T. and it's his. It's basically Top Secret. I mean, as a kid, he's a role player, and he plays like a secret agent. And so I can't remember the other main character's name, but throughout the movie, he is investigating, or he gets roped into some clandestine.
Oh, I've got to look that up. How could I have missed that?
Yeah, I have no idea. Well, partly it's a cheesy movie, but
well, yeah, but I love cheesy movies. I'm a Mystery Science Theater fan, so those guys sit around ripping on movies.
Oh man.
See, and did you say, so this is where I kind of got lost. Did you say that you did play the Star Wars from West End?
I did not. Matter of fact, I've never played it. I've never played
that book is so awesome because it's got all the cheese. It's like got recruitment posters for the Empire. It was an awesome book. Love that.
Nice.
Game. So fun.
Well, it's funny now that I'm older and I've started picking up these games. I'm like, man, I wish I would have bought these back in the day.
Yeah.
There's such a difference in writing. So this will tell you how narrow I was, right? It was Holmes, and then it was Moldvay. We bought the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons monster manuals so I could have more monsters to throw at these guys, right? We did have some AD&D books, but we didn't use them. I would cannibalize rules out of the AD&D stuff that I liked as a GM, and the players just played whatever homebrew crap I put in front of them, right? But I had never looked at a Dungeon Master's Guide, and the other day I'm on YouTube and there's some guys reading the the first edition AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide by Gary Gygax, and he's highlighted text in that of how to play and how to be a DM, and I'm thinking, holy shit, I've never seen this book. And some of the stuff that's in that book, I'm like, are you kidding me? Gary Gygax wrote a treatise on how to be a DM? Are you kidding me? I had no idea. It's basically a 200-page treatise on DMing, and I'm thinking two things. One, that's amazing because nobody does that now. Really, in my opinion, it's all corporate nonsense mostly. And two, I don't know if it's a good idea because that stuff becomes canon, right? This is where people fight about the rules. Well, Gary said here. Gary said it becomes in a way canon, and it's like, holy cow. If I had played with other groups as a kid, if I had gone around the corner to another guy's house and played with him, I would have probably been shocked by how he was GM in D&D, But it's amazing how much I know, but I'm more amazed at how ignorant I am of the history. I mean, of these books and of these,
Yeah. Well, you had a really long break too, so.
Who, Gary?
No, you did, right? You had like this.
Oh, I had an 18-year,
a very long break.
I walked away at 20, God, I don't know, 20 something. And then I did play in a three game. A friend of mine's buddy, who was the district attorney in El Paso County, was running an epic D&D 3 session. And my buddy played baseball with him. He said, dude, you got to come play with this guy. And I said, really? I said, all right, I'm 26. I haven't played in years. Hell, this would be cool. So this guy sends me, I get like 3 days later in the mail. In the mail, I get a manila envelope with like 32-page dossier on my character, the lore, the history, what gods I needed to pay. And I didn't even make this character.
Oh, wow.
Jeff said, what would you like to play? You want something you want to play? I said, an elf, man. Give me an elf ranger or something. And I get this packet of 30 pages pre-written for me, my history, my family, my heritage. I thought, what the fuck is this? Where do I come into play, right? Pardon me, I just cursed. Was that okay, gentlemen?
Oh, you can curse all the fuck.
Yeah, because unfortunately, I am. Yeah. So
I used to censor it until people were asking why do I.
you?
No. I used to censor it, but for one, I got tired of having to bleep out every third word.
Right.
And two, people were asking, "Is like, why do you bleep out the swears?" I was like,
yeah. Well, if you tell me where, I'll watch it. So so if you need me to, I'll rein it in.
No, go nuts.
Anyway, and I went to this guy's house, and he had, and I'm not kidding you, right? I'm 26 years old. I had never played before with anybody else but my table as a GM. And he's got this massive basement with huge tables. He's got this whole castle set up with minis, and he's got music going, and he's got like 8 guys already at the table. And I walk in, I feel like I've just breached. I feel like I'm literally an imposter. I'm an interloper, right? And I'm like, what is going on? And it was for them, I think it was remarkable. For me, it was dull as dirt.
Oh, see,
dull as dirt. I would sit for my turn to speak, and I would sit for my turn to roll the dice. And I thought, this is crazy. No one's involved here. It's like they were waiting to. But either way, they've been playing together for years, so that's just how they did things. But that was my first experience at 26 after being away for about 8 years. Let's say I quit at about 21. I got married at 24. I was dating. I was putting myself through school. So I think the last game I might have played might have been 21 maybe. So, and then of course I came back thanks to the RPG Brigade on YouTube. By accident, I found some role-playing videos. I said, dude, there's other adults out there playing role-playing. What's wrong with these guys? And then I realized, wait a minute. I could get back into role-playing, and I wouldn't be the only weirdo out there, I mean, I really did leave role-playing. I left it behind like it was a childhood thing, right? And then I realized there's a whole culture out there. So that's how alienated I was from the culture. That's how completely away from it I was. And then when I found out about Labyrinth Lore through Tim Harper reviewing a Labyrinth Lore, and that it was a free PDF, I said, uh-oh. And I snatched that sucker, put together a table here in town, and started running guys in a campaign here, and that's when I went to YouTube, started doing recap videos and expressing the experience that I was having coming back to gaming after an 18-year hiatus. And that's kind of how I started my YouTube channel. And then complaining about 4th edition because
that's right. Yeah, that was
the other guy here in town was running 4E. And invited me to those games. The guy that was in my group that I was running the OSR for was running 4E. And he said, you got to come play 4E. And oh my God, you can imagine how that went. I felt it just totally, totally bizarre to me by comparison to what I've been doing. Yeah. And you can imagine what these young guys were thinking at my table. What, man? No maps, no minis? What? No, just this one sheet of paper? What? Yeah. Just 8 hit points?
But how do I know what I can do?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah. And they would. And I'll never forget it. The first time I said, okay, guys, I introduced them to the scenario or to the setting, and they just kind of stared at me like crickets. And I went, what do you guys want to do here? And then what do you mean? What can we do? And I said, I just told you where you're at, what you're looking at. Take action, They were accustomed to going around the table with their cards and basically combat. They were accustomed to combat setups, in 4E. And 4E, obviously was built, I think, for combat. More so than any D&D, I think, prior. Of course, I'm speaking out of turn as I've never played 3.5. Right. So
I would say most of them are kind of geared towards combat. Even 5, it's just, I always say you can see the wargaming roots
Well, the problem with D&D a lot of times is your character advancement, and this is one thing that I like about Savage Worlds is character advancement in D&D is all combat focused. When you get
It
in the
is,
feat,
yeah.
it's a combat feat. Whereas
Yep.
in Savage Worlds, you can take edges that are social, that are leadership, that are not necessarily combat related, which is, I think, refreshing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's huge. It's gigantic. And well, my biggest issue with Dungeons and Dragons, period, is you're informed on how the game's meant to be played by one major piece, and that is the only way you get experience is killing and treasure. That dictates the game before it starts because the players aren't stupid. They want experience. They're not going to do things that don't get them experience points. Right now,
I think that's
I'm
one
referring
reason.
to the era I played. Right.
Yeah.
The D&D 5e may have other ways you earn experience points, and then that starts this level crawl to get better, stronger, faster, killing bigger, stronger, faster things. And they've attempted to put role playing pieces in it, I believe, with the personality traits, etc. But is that all trappings? Because it seems to me I was looking at the spell list in the basic free PDF 2 days ago. I mean, more than half of the spells are all combat spells.
Yeah, right. Same way 3.5 was in 3.
Right. And to me, I mean, when that's the only way you're going to get experience is just through those two things, well, that's a dungeon crawl, or it's a war, or which is fine. I mean, that's how ultimately we've played it. And when I usually run an old school OSR, that it ends up, if I'm going to use experience points the way it's written in the book, that's ultimately what they're doing. They're going out to explore a cavern or a Golgotha, a dungeon, tombs, whatever, and it ultimately amounts to collecting treasure and XP. So it does affect that's not what I try to run, but ultimately, if you're going to sit down with people and say we're playing 5e, they know they know the mechanism, right? They know the mechanism of success. They know the mechanism of their characters improving. I mean, one thing I know when I sit down with players is if they have the books, they know exactly what those rules are, and they're going to expect you to adhere to them, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Dude, we should have got 1,300 XP for that thing, right? There'll be some guy calculating how much XP they should have earned, right? And that's what they're looking to do is improve their character through the game. Savage Worlds, I haven't even looked at how you advance a character, because I don't look at Savage Worlds as about advancement. I look at it as about right here, right now, in the shit, right? But that's also how I play most games. As a player, I play right here, right now, in the mindset of my character. I'm not worried. I'm not thinking about anything else. So in that sense, I'm not a good gamer. I'm a good role player, but I'm not a good gamer. You would not want me in your Pathfinder spec op unit, because I would be the guy who probably gets everybody in trouble or killed, because I don't min max. I'm not a power gamer.
No, we play with Finder, so there's no purpose of trying to, I guess, win in an RPG.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's he rolls interestingly.
I'm actually really nervous for Finder's character in this Curse of Strahd experiment. I'm real fucking nervous because he really does roll the way. He rolls terrible in real life. He rolls terrible on digital. I'm terrified.
The best stories come out of failure. Absolutely, man. The best stories.
Those are his only stories.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I'm a professional personal trainer, and I tell everybody, dude, you ain't failing, you ain't trying.
Yeah. Let's hope.
It's just gonna succeed sometime, maybe.
Right. That's funny. Holy cow. Yeah. So I've been on a mission for years to find the perfect game.
Here it comes.
Yep.
And that has been I think I'm probably, if I'm famous on YouTube for anything, it's that I get a game and I go, this is pretty badass, and I'll get another one and go, yeah, this is pretty sweet. And I'm always looking for the next great OSR, but part of that is nostalgia. I'm also looking for that game that takes me back to being 13. That first time I opened up Mincer.
Yeah. And
or Mulve.
The theme of this episode is chasing the tabletop dragon.
Yeah. So 19 minutes in, we get to the topic.
It's not a record yet. It's not a record.
Yeah. But Jason's not wrong, because it's kind of what he does, and it's an interesting take, because if you're watching Jason's videos, there's no. So Jason does not like internet drama. I know
No.
that.
Oh God,
And
no.
so Jason doesn't talk about a system for internet drama points or to shit on anything, but it's this incredibly sincere approach to, does this game do what it says, and how does that really make you feel? And then you do move on to another system because you're like, I guess it's just that's not quite the one yet.
Right.
But it's neat because you also get to experience a lot about these systems, and it's not like
Right.
you make 3-minute videos crying about it.
No, hell no.
These very in-depth videos of like, oh, here's character creation, here's the
Right.
sample game. So it's amazing to watch that process.
Yeah, there seems to be two types of YouTubers out there, I think. And the ones that seem to be very popular are the ones that are teaching you the game and telling you all the secrets of how to make the best paladin in 5th edition.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, who watches this? I mean, who's watching this stuff, right? But obviously, they're very, very popular, right?
Yeah.
So, no, for me, I try to be authentic. I try to be genuine, and I try to share exactly what I'm thinking. And sometimes I might contradict myself because, well, human beings do. But the gist is to be, and I'm generally positive. I won't do a whole lot. Now, when I first came on YouTube, dude, I went after Pathfinder and 40 something fierce.
Well, the brigade days were different. That was fun.
Yeah. And over the course of these last, I don't know, 14 years, I've also had a lot more game experiences outside of what I used to do. So I became less critical of gamers and more critical of games, but in a way that I recognize now that, hey, dude, to each his own. I don't eat the same dinner every night.
Yeah.
I wouldn't tell you whether you should eat chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream. It's all your business. But it took me a few lumps in the social media community for me to realize, wait a minute, why I'm not going to have these arguments with people. It's asinine. And instead, I'd rather have interesting conversations about how the mechanics intone a vibe. How the mechanics affect play and how the mechanics create a. And I was just talking to Scott. I don't know if Rich was here when we were talking about this. With this one that I'm preparing. I'm not certain I can keep it until Scott said, yeah, use the gritty rules. So again, now that I know those rules are in there, the mechanics are in Savage Worlds, I don't have to worry about the game getting too pulp, right? Because I see Savage Worlds could be run as a very, I can never think of the right word here for this. I don't want to say, again, I said cerebral, that's really not what I meant, but a very methodical kind of intense, change that level of success to a certain kind of intensity, in the scene or in the danger, right?
Sure. Yeah. And sorry. So that's the thing too, is like not just setting rules. Make sure you go over the section, and Rich too, jump in. Look at dramatic tasks, because that will be huge for what you want to do.
Yep.
Because it builds that tension. Trying to think, social conflict rules.
Right.
Very important. Yeah.
See, and these are things that don't exist in old D&D or OSRs.
Yeah.
Right. You rolled up a character randomly. You gave him a name, generally some kind of crazy name, because people knew they weren't probably going to survive, and they could afford to name their character Jackass because they weren't going to have to live with him very long. So D&D, unfortunately, I think perpetuated a certain style of play and certain habits and a certain adherence to why you would think of role playing on a terms other than just a dungeon crawl, right?
Sure. Yeah.
At least where I come from. Again, I'm not speaking to those who played Vampire the Masquerade. The intention was completely different, right?
Yeah.
Well, one thing I kind of I find Savage Worlds is one of those settings that a lot of people actually do stick to.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I like Savage Worlds, but I'm still in the hunt for that, that setting, that system, that really kind of just hooks me in and says, this is the one, which I know it's never going to happen. Like, you can't really chase that kind of shit with it actually coming true.
Right.
But there's different, I think one of the things that you kind of have to look in as a system is like, what does it do well? Because you're never going to find a system that does everything perfectly. Like right now, my current chase is Mutant Crawl Classic. I'm absolutely loving it. I'm halfway through the book, reading it a second time.
Okay.
Just because I'm trying to, I just love the kind of comedic factors of it. The system itself seems quite simple. It seems like I prefer what's the word I'm looking for?
Gonzo.
Gonzo, theater of the mind type style. Yes,
Yeah.
Gonzo, where I can really kind of let my just let it kind of fly with whatever I want. Like I've already thought of a bit involving a toaster.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, as someone who's developed tabletop sports games, lots of them, and have provided them, so it's funny, as a designer, I know exactly what I'm trying to create, and there's a design intent. I'll sit down to say, okay, the game has to do this. It has to achieve this, this, and this, and then it, of course, has to have game elements. But I never analyzed role-playing games that way because I played whatever I got my hands on as a kid, and I ran them. I'd read the book, and then I would I'd teach them how to make characters or whatever, and then we'd play that game, however well I knew the rules. That's what they got. Whether I was good at it or not, you would have to ask a lot of the guys I ran games for. They kept coming back, so it must have been fun at least. But I never looked at role playing games with its design intent. Therefore, I never analyzed role playing games beyond what I was using them for. Right, and of course, coming back, having designed and sold my own tabletop football game in the 2000s, and was designing sports games. Only then, when I came back to role playing, did I start kind of looking at, oh yeah, right, I see there's a reason to do it a particular way. And the game we're designing now, Dell and I's goal was to reduce the game's mechanics so they're invisible, basically. Let the players play, let the players narrate. When the players say something that would be contested, that's when we draw on the dice very quickly to decide whether it's pass fail or whether it's fell forward or whatever we do with it. Everything is narrative driven. There's just not a lot of mechanics at all, right? So we don't have social combat rules. We have attributes that of course are called upon based on what the players narrating their characters' actions are. And then they're simple checks. They're simple checks against the difficulty value. It's a very simple system. And our goal is to be first person IC, never meta. So if you watch our play tests, we're rarely meta. Well, we're kind of teaching our game in our play test a little bit, and we're talking about the mechanic out loud in the last play test, so people can kind of follow what we're doing. But our goal when we play is IC first person. It's live, so we're going, and Scott says, "Yeah, I'm gonna run across the tavern and kick over the chairs, and I'm gonna drive my two-handed sword right through this fucking Viking's chest." And I say, "Okay, you need to make your combat roll." And he just rolls the dice. He either succeeds or fails. If he succeeds, that's a wound, and he continues the narration. Right? It's like what it does is it substantiates. It just decides whether there's an actual wound or not. But then I can either spin it on him. The Viking does this, and then he has to make a roll against the Viking or whatever. So it's a very conversational live in session. So there's very little meta. So even Savage Worlds, as well as it ran the other night, and it was ran beautifully by Scott. And I think we all knew the rules well enough that we didn't make it difficult for Scott to facilitate. But there's a meta piece. This is why I felt like it was graphic novel the other night, because there's the narrative part, and then there's the stop and make the roll, analyze what we get from the roll, and then we describe what that looks like. That to me sets up multiple psychological phases of the game, right? So there's a psychological thing that happens when we leave that space, and then we go to the dice, and then we interpret the dice, and then we get back into that space. So for me, that's what most games do. I would argue 90% of games do, regardless of the mechanic. There is some level of meta that occurs that changes us from live play to let's check the data to back to the action. It's like pausing a movie and talking about we just watched, and then starting the movie again, and then pausing it to say, "Wow, I wonder if she's going to kiss him right now. Let's go out. Let's hit it again. Play. Yep, she kissed him. Hey, I wonder if they're going to get in the sack. We pause it to talk about whether they're going to get in the. Yep, they're going to get in the sack. So this has been role playing for me. Unfortunately, that's just been the way role playing has been done. I have yet to meet a system that defines how we're going to do this without it being just how can I say it? Can you give players complete agency and still activate dice in such a minimum way that we don't even need to discuss it, right? And I think our game's trying to do that, but our game's also doing something else. And I was telling Dell this, we're really trying to teach GMs to be a naive narrator. And so most of our book is designed to give the GM tools to become a naive narrator and allow the game to happen live as opposed to knowing where it's going, right? So when I use a module or I write something like this Savage Worlds game I'm going to do, I'm going to know where the chateau's at. I'm going to know, where the evil villain's at. I'm going to know what the evil villain's up to. I'm going to have all that down like a module. In Dark Age of Man, you don't have any of that. You're not supposed to know any of that, right? So our game is really completely asking the GM to be a player and be utterly naive to what's going to happen, where we're going. Know certain things so you're not dumb, you're not blind, you're not constantly thwarting the players with made up shit. And then we have tools. We have a random seed generator tools that inform the GM that something's occurred in the world on a danger scale that is going to potentially impact the players, and that can be introduced into play contextually at any time. So our game is incredibly simple to play for players, and then we have a prestige tool too. And somehow I got talking about my game. I'm so sorry. I don't know. This isn't meant to be about my game, guys. I'm sorry.
No, but it's a good reading because I mean,
it just dawned on me. I'm now talking about my game. I'm sorry.
But I'll ask you the question. No, I think this is perfect. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
And you may or may not have an answer, but I know you, so I know what to expect a little bit. Is Dark Age of Man going to be the end of the dragon chase for you?
Yeah. I told Dell the other day. I haven't run anything that did not use my naive narrator and my tools in the last year and a half. So even before we decided to start writing Dark Age of Man to use these tools and these concepts, so I was already inventing these concepts with Modern Age. I was running with OSRs. I was already doing it this way. So that I know is never going to change for me. Now, I will do my first Savage Worlds game in 8 years. I'm going to adhere to a particular thing because I think it does justice to Savage Worlds, right? So I won't be doing what I normally do with the Savage Worlds game that I'm preparing. I will actually do a traditional prep, and that it will have these things, right? That you could turn into a module if you were writing this for somebody. Yes, I am making the game I want to play, and to answer that, Scott's short story long, right? I am making the game that I had rather GM, and I had rather be a player in. And the thing I learned the most when I came back, and I had never had a chance to be a player, right? I'd always been a GM. And so what I've learned the most since coming to YouTube and meeting people and having a chance to sit at their tables and playing with great guys, I realized all the shit I hate about being a player. Stuff I never knew I would have disliked, right? Yeah. So, wait a minute. I didn't like that. I didn't like that Ivan would just snatch that from me and tell me to make a random die roll out of nowhere. So, dude, that sucks, even though that's normal. I was doing that to my players for 20 years.
Of course.
Right? I was doing all of the same things that I later found out when I played. I don't like that. So I'm trying to make the game I'd like to play in, and I'm trying to make the game that I like to prepare for. And so in doing this, these experimental games with Dell, we did these experimental games, and I came up with these concepts and ideas. And then I realized how much joy I was having as a GM, not because it was low prep, but because I didn't know where the game was going. It was freaking amazing. These stories, these adventures that would come out of the dice results, and interacting with Dell's character, taking live action against the world. So I put him. Here's an example. First game we ever played, I put Dell in he walks into the tavern of Dredgewater. This is the world I invented for Dragon Slayer before he became Dark Age of Man. Dell comes into this tavern, and I had rolled on the random seed generator, would be king, or the real king. So it's that vague. So the random seed generator has vague references, and they're seeded to difficulty or danger. For instance, 3d6, 3 and 18 could be dragon, right? That could change the world. It's very dangerous. But in the middle of that chart are mundane stuff. Well, like number 11 was the real king. So Dell comes into the tavern. He's the only guy there. He's talking to the bar wench. And he says, well, who's in here? And I said, well, there's one guy sitting over there, and he's eating by himself. He's a young guy. He's probably 20. So Dell says, I grab an arrow. I go plop down next to this guy. And this guy, I said, well, we proceed to role play live in character. And he tells him, I'm the real king. I'm the king of the little kingdom right down the road there. And that my uncles killed my father and run me and my little sister out of town. And so I tell him this tale as this king, literally made up from the random seed generator, give me the seed. And Dell says, you're full of shit. He gets up and he walks out, right? And so Dell decides to go, well, I'm going to rent a room, go upstairs and rest. So he goes upstairs and rests. Well, meanwhile, he tells Dell this in character. Remember, I'm making this up. I don't know where it's going, so I'm completely making it up. I have to become the king, this would-be king. And I have to make sense of this seed that I've written called the real king. So I tell Dell, listen, I'm hiring mercenaries. I want you to join me. I'm going to go out and I'm going to go around and try to take some of these guys and go take back my father's castle. And Dell says, you're full of shit. You're not the real king. He says, I'm not getting involved in your crap. And he goes upstairs. Meanwhile, I have him banged awake in the middle of the night by the princess, his little sister, says, my brother didn't come home. He went out to hire mercenaries. He disappeared. So everything that occurred in our conversation it fed what I gave Dell later. The princess became now his headache because this 10-year-old girl was left behind and his brother went out to hire mercenaries. So then Dell's dragging this 10-year-old kid around with him, trying to find his brother, and ends up encountering other seeds that come off the chart. I roll new seeds. Every time he encounters a seed, I roll a new seed. That seed, then I have to fold that into the fiction live somewhere, right? And it might be something mundane, like it begins to rain, heavy rain, right? So it's almost like wandering monsters, but instead of monsters, they're story pits. They would be events or variables that his character could run into, right? So it's kind of hard to explain, but then you have to stay in the mindset of a live game. You don't have time to really think out where this is going. So we have since in writing the rules have realized, well, we got to give better structure than that. So the rule writing of the last year and a half has been creating, how do you teach this? And how do you put it in a rule book so people could buy your rule book and actually implement what I'm doing? Because that was the hardest part. And then I basically taught it to Dell and said, Dell, why don't you run me in some games doing it? And Dell was like, holy shit, this is teachable. You can do this. And we're like, yep, we need to write this.
Yeah.
So that's how we decided to make Dark Age of Man. So Dark Age of Man's setting belonged to another game I had made years ago called Dragon Slayer. We're using Dell's dice system with my setting and my what we call it, the presenter, instead of the game master or the DM. He's called the presenter because he presents the world, presents the NPCs, and then of course presents the dangers that occur live. So it's that's the gist of the game. And again, I did not mean to spend this time. I mean, I don't think you guys had me on here to pitch my game, but
no, it's fine.
But, yeah, so yes, I definitely am creating the game. And 1996, I love tabletop sports games. I grew up playing tabletop sports games with my buddies. And if you guys have never played Status Pro Football or paid it, you won't know what the hell I'm talking about. Right? It's not ping pong. They're actually simulators, sports simulators. Yeah. They're head-to-head competition. And in 26, I said I would love to play one of those games, but my buddies aren't around, and I don't have those games. So I sat down to invent my own solitaire pro football tabletop game. And by 97, it was copywritten and registered. And by 2000, I was selling it all over the world. I was packaging and selling this football game all over the world out of my basement of my home. But that's when I realized if you want something, you got to make it yourself. Well, I had never dreamed I would design a role-playing game because I always thought, it's too much work. It's way ahead of my head. It's way above my head. But in the last 15 years, I've learned enough from playing and enough from what I encounter in games that are cool. But I don't want to be derivative. I don't want to say that's cool from Savage Worlds. Let me steal that. And that's cool from no. This is about a style of play. And I told Dell, we're not writing mechanics to sell. We're not selling you mechanics. We're selling you a new way of playing. We're selling you a new attitude about your character. And then we put you in the Dark Ages because we have a prestige system that puts your character relevant to other characters in the world. So prestige is a class-based thing. If you want to talk to the king and your prestige is 0, you're a peasant, the king is not going to meet you. The king is not going to, there's just no way. There's no way in hell you're going to get audience with the king. And your goal is to actually get higher repute. And then, of course, your character would go from, if you're a soldier, maybe you become king. So we do have a concept that you can win our game. But you win by getting to repute 10, which would be a king or a Merlin or whatever, right? But we're a levelless system. We don't have levels. We don't. You don't level up much. You get 1 repute point. You get 1 point to put on your attributes, and that's it. that 1 point modifies your D12. So it's a 1 point addition to a potential D12 check, right? So it's very simple. And we got it done, the original done, and Brian ran a game for us that was genius, and Kevin Millman ran a game for us that was one of the best experiences I've ever had with our beta rules. He ran us through a session that I still to this day, that was fucking amazing. I mean, I was in character the whole game. Never once did I think about mechanics. And you would have to ask Kevin whether he liked the presenter side of the table, but the fact that he ran it was an amazing experience. And I think Kevin dug it too. I don't know. You'd have to ask Kevin how he liked running the game, but there is no prep really. We do teach what's called session construction. So you do construct a 1-page session. It's just 1 page of highlights with a random seed table, and that's your session prep. It takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes to prepare a session, and then you can string sessions together in context as their characters change the world, right? So your random seed generator should always remember what happened in the last session. So in a game Dell and I play tested, I rolled flood. It was a 3. It was an 18 actually on the chart. It was a catastrophic flood. This was biblical. So I literally Dredgewater, the town the character started in, was destroyed in that session. First session, catastrophic flood destroyed the entire village. And so if we continue with that character and we play the next game, Dredgewater's gone. It's been decimated. So that's just changed the entire world that Dell's character's in. So you have to take notes. You're going to have to be prepared that your next random seed generator for next session might be rebuilding Dredgewater issues. It might be bandits are tenfold now because Dredgewater's been reduced to a epic disaster, which is going to create more bandits. It's going to create more. So then you would change those random seeds to reflect what's happening around Dredgewater. Or if Dell happened to become the steward of a little castle, right? You need random seeds to affect his responsibilities as steward. So you make the random seeds contextual to what the characters are achieving or doing in game. And it really is wide open. So, and again, the prep is very low. Players have very little to be concerned about. The character sheet is 5 attributes, basically. So it was written to be a minimalist game, but it's got much more depth in the rulebook than a 1-page RPG, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, sure. And so it's interesting. Well, first off, when you were describing it, there's 3s of listeners screaming Dungeon World and fucking Fate as you're talking about some.
Yeah, and
those
are 2 I've never read. Oddly enough, I've never played those and I haven't read them. So okay,
yeah, but I'm just saying, like, because it's the concept is familiar with some folks.
Okay.
And also, I know Rich personally loves when you don't use the term Dungeon Master or Game Master as the person who runs the game. That is his favorite shit ever.
Yeah, ours presents. Ours is the presenter, right? Yeah, I don't know. Somebody told me Dungeon World though was cued by adjectives, right? You use terminology, right? Don't you?
That's oh shit, help me. The Monty Cook one.
Or Cortex?
No, not Cortex.
No,
Monty
not
Cook's
Cortex.
Monty Cook's system is you're a noun that verbs, adverbally or whatever the fuck.
God,
I can't think of the name of the game now.
I know it too.
Threes of people are screaming like what the answer is.
No,
Well, yeah, but so I knew something about Dungeon World being prompted.
Numenera.
Mechanics were prompted by words.
Yeah, Numenera. Yeah.
Numenera.
So
Right.
what I was gonna say though is like, what's interesting is of all the games that you went into and made videos of,
Right.
like you completely walked away from a D20 base to accomplish what you wanted, and it's to me that's really fascinating that there was such a devotion and focus to Dungeons and Dragons, and
So let me give you that background. So
Yeah.
when I wrote Dragon Slayer, it was a D10 game.
Mhm.
I was keeping everything very small math.
Yeah.
Then Dell introduced me to this sliding scale system he was using, and I said, "Okay, cool. Let's use your dice mechanic with these other style concepts that I'm talking about, and these other presenter concepts." But we were using the D20, Scott. So let's be clear. It was a D20. It was a D20 for that. we've only went back to the D12 since I've come back, right? Since I've come back.
But still, you are
We weren't
laser
using
focused on that, right?
No, we didn't care what dice. I mean, we could have used cards. We could have used
right. So that's what's interesting is
I think I don't care. Yeah, we only care about pass fail, and we do use pass fail, right? Except we make it clear in the rules. It's pass fail, but failure changes circumstances, changes situation. It shouldn't end the narrative direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if Dale says I'm going to stab the Viking and he fails, well, he takes a wound, as I describe how the Viking, parries his sword and kicks him in the crotch, sending him back across the room onto his butt. Next, and then Dale says, "Well, I'm getting up and I'm now looking for I'm gonna grab a torch or whatever Dale wants to do." And then, of course, he can call into all kinds of ways to utilize his attributes: his mind, his spirit, his prestige, right? So in Savage Worlds, you would taunt. Well, in our game, you would use prestige, right? You could actually challenge them, and prestige might be called upon in that taunt, right? Yeah. So, but the GM is in complete kind of flexibility as to how that's presented based on how the character narrates. So if Dell narrates something physical, I say make a body check for that, Dell, if it's a challenge. If he narrates that he's, calling the king out, I'll say, okay, we're looking at a prestige check here, buddy, at a very high difficulty because it's the king and you're just a freaking blacksmith. And, his prestige is 0 because he's already 1. Maybe he's just a blacksmith with a hut, right? It's going to be a lower effect upon the king to demand the king do something, right? So we're using the mechanics based on what they are narrating they're doing or what they're in character doing. Hopefully in character doing, first person.
You sure?
Right?
Yeah. What was you all just ran a game. It was a Viking invasion game in Dark Age of Man.
Yep.
A couple days ago, last week.
Well, Dell ran us. He and his son Jory in a Viking game. We've created England, which is England, 960, roughly 900 to 1100, right? It doesn't really matter. We're not sticking hard and fast. It's fictional version, and we've defined our England and we've defined where you start in the game. Well, Dell said, dude, I really think we should add. And we have sea peoples. So we just call them the sea peoples, and they're a threat all the time. They should be on every one of your random sea charts. The sea peoples raid, the sea peoples are scouting, the sea peoples are hunting, the sea peoples are trading, whatever. They should be on there somewhere. And then Dell said, dude, I've been listening to the Dark Ages great courses. Dude, we should really make sure the Vikings are in the book. They should have a written description, and you should let players become sea peoples. I said, absolutely. I have no problem. That'd be sweet. So Dell said, let's play test it, and you and Jory can be Vikings on your first raid. And so that's what we did. And we had this conversation like the day before, 45 minutes. And then Dale says, hey, man, let's run it tomorrow. Jory's home from school. You're home. I said, okay. And Dale comes in from work, sits down, has 5 minutes. He's jamming food into his mouth. And Dale's running a session that goes for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and had 5 minutes to prepare. That's what we're talking about. And it was fantastic.
It was a cool session. It was a good listen. So, and that was the thing is people want to kind of check out how the system
Sure.
Out now. Sure. Yeah, it was a very cool one to listen to.
But, we make no bones about it. It's really about a certain style of play, somewhat more than mechanics. But again, you'd like your mechanics to support that style, and that's the kicker. Making sure the mechanics support what you're claiming the style should be. Yeah. So we're dictating. We want to dictate style or system matters, right? System affects play. So Savage Worlds, fine example. You're not going to get pulp if Savage Worlds doesn't have this aces and raises, right? I mean, that creates some serious pulp, right? It's bigger, it's larger than life, and the players are going to succeed a lot more, and they're in control of how much they succeed by using bennies and getting those extra dice rolls. So you can hear that one, and then I ran a game a couple of days later. I actually used our rules.
That's right.
I thought, I better sit down. And maybe we better go ahead. I hadn't seen our book in 11 months. I mean, I literally walked away from the computer for 11 months. I didn't write. I didn't look at anything. I wasn't online. I took a hiatus from everything. And I thought, maybe since, I haven't seen this book, I should probably sit down and read my session construction rules and actually follow my rules. So I used my rules to make the one-page session thing. And that's what I ran. That's the last game I ran. That's our last Dark Age of Man playtest that's on the channel. Is that
okay?
And I even walk people through that. I think in the game I talk about how out of those 17 let's see, or 17. How many options? How many options are in 3 to 18? I mean, what is that? 17 on the chart? How many? Is that
16, right?
16? Something.
Math.
They ended up activating 7 random seeds in that hour and a half. So you just get an idea of how much that random seed chart can put in front of them these interesting variables that keep the game moving. But they have a major dilemma, they have a minor dilemma, and they have an inciting incident. So we define how they're set up. We define the major dilemma that's happening around them, the minor dilemma that can affect the major dilemma, and then we have the inciting incident that the players generally face in the first few minutes. Then they're off and running, and then of course random seeds are these things that kind of can bump them off course, or it can be game changers. The plague, right? The plague will show up. Now they're dealing with people dying of the plague, and they're potentially threatened by the plague. So it can change the entire direction of the session.
Sure. I mean, it's
Right.
cool. I just from what I've seen and what I've heard, I think you guys have a winner on your hands. I really do. It's like
Well,
I learned the same lesson. It's like
Yeah.
I gave up trying to make Dungeons and Dragons and OSR. It worked for me, so I'm like,
Right.
I could just write my own game, and I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I had no intention. I mean, I've designed sports games and I've sold sports games. But again, as I said before, I didn't design it to make money. I designed it for me. And then if it turns out other people like it, hallelujah.
Yeah.
We want to make a really good game that if people want to buy it, they're going to get at least a book worth having on their shelf. We got some really cool artists. We got all original art to the whole book and the cover. And they're all in the community. We wanted to use artists that are also in the community. And so we're gonna have some pretty good art in the book, I think, and it's just gonna be a different book. Now I haven't seen something like Dungeon Wars, but I've said it before. How innovative is how much innovation? Runeslinger and I talked about this a while back. Anthony and I. How much innovation are we really seeing in the hobby anyway? I mean, what is innovation, and how much do we see? So you're bound to by accident. It's like saying, "Dude, you guys are rock and roll." Isn't that what that's AC/DC, You're bound to sound like somebody else. You're bound to. So I'm sure there's going to be some styles of games that our game might appeal to Dungeon World people, maybe
Yes,
more.
absolutely, it will.
That might be what you're saying, right?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. I think
so there may be an audience for the kind of thing we're doing.
Absolutely,
I don't
there
know.
is.
Yeah,
because people go crazy for it because it's quick and fast to run, and
that's it.
That's become more important for a lot of people.
But there's no doubt mechanics influence. I mean, there's times I'm torn because I really like the easy play and the easy IC first person perspective. But then a game like Savage Worlds, you're like, I really dig the fact that this is supported by a mechanic.
Yeah.
Right? There is something about their direct mechanic supported by taunt or a direct mechanic, there is a certain satisfaction to utilizing that, but then also recognizing how that's affected play, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, sure. And it's everything I run.
Right.
Savage, you said it. Savage Worlds, D&D. It doesn't matter what game I run.
Yeah.
I run at such a frenetic pace.
That's me. Yeah.
That the players you have no choice but to come along for the ride. I'm going to take you.
And
you're going to make all the crazy choices,
yeah.
and I'm just going to do crazy shits and see how far you're willing to make those choices.
Right. And please, no mother may I. Right. I'm begging you, no mother may I. Right. So listen, I'd rather you just declare what you're doing. Don't ask me if you can do it.
Yeah, and we talked about that too, especially on the channel. It was like, stop asking if you can search for something. Say, I'm going over to the wall to look for a secret door. It's that easy. But I'm not sure how that got broken in gaming. But that's a topic for another day. Actually.
Oh man, I don't know. That's true. We could talk about bad habits, or we could talk about how this. Yeah.
Goddamn video games ruining the youth of today.
I did have some millennials today admit that's sort of where all this is stemming from, the video game culture.
Sons of bitches.
I guess that's really, it's hard for me to say. When I read the examples in the old D&D books, right? I'm trying to think when they give those examples, those Gary says you're standing in front of a door and it's whatever, and the guy says, I don't recall ever in those examples anybody saying, "Can I pick the lock?"
Not at all. It's always in character,
right? And it's always, "I'm going to pick the lock." Get out of the way, Joe. And it's like, wait a minute. So where is this stuff learned? I mean, where is this these habits come from? All I can think is it comes from people that are so rookie, they're so noob that they can't imagine what they're allowed to do.
Yeah.
But I'm a Gen Xer, dude. I don't ever ask permission.
No, exactly. We don't give a shit. So
no, dude, I don't ask permission. I'm doing my shit. You're gonna actually have to scold me.
yeah, like, you can't do that.
You're gonna have to tell me, dude, Jay, you can't do that, right? Now, it's like premature imagining. That's something I don't think I do as a player. The premature imagining was also bizarre to me. Why would you announce you're doing something that you haven't yet done, especially when dice are involved, right? But apparently people do that all the time as well, right? They imagine that they've already killed the goblin and they haven't even rolled the die yet. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, please don't tell me you've killed the goblin. Let's see if you roll the dice.
Yeah.
But there's no way of getting away from that, even in D&D. The pass-fail system creates this dynamic that we're all waiting for the dice to drop before we can actually imagine it. And then you get into the hit-miss thing, right? Hit-miss, 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 hit, crit, 20! Right? That's most D&D games, that's how they devolve into that, right?
Yeah.
So, fascinating. I must have run Rich and Santa out of here, man. I haven't heard them. I'm rambling on here.
Oh, no, I'm right here.
They get quiet sometimes.
Yeah, my voice has been kind of cutting in and out over the past couple of weeks, so I don't really mind too much.
Well, let me know if I'm talking too much about our game, and we need to talk more about.
No, that's good. We have about.
It tends to dominate your consciousness when you're writing and developing. It's hard to. It's what's on our mind, right?
100%, and like it is true that like if you're chasing the tabletop dragon, sometimes it's better just to create your own because you're never going to find exactly what you want.
Right.
So I think it actually summarized it quite well.
Yeah.
We're running up onto about the 1 hour mark.
Okay.
So if people are curious about actually checking out your game or even you and your buddy's channel, what's the best way of looking it up?
Oh, well, Roleplay Café on YouTube is a good way to just see what we're doing. And we try to keep updates of Dark Age of. We try to run play tests quite a bit. Most of the sessions I've run that are on that channel use our style, even if we weren't running our game. So the 2061 stuff, where Dell and I perfected this kind of way. If you look up those actual play 2061 videos, you can see us doing that with a game called AIW, which is a one-page free game, and that's where we decided we kept stripping the systems away. So we started with Modern Age and said, man, there's too many mechanics, let's strip that away. We went to a Wild West OSR and I said, nah, too many mechanics, strip it away. I found the AIA stuff, and then I've run a Conan session with IDW, which is AIA's fantasy. So you can just see kind of how we're working on this kind of preparation, presenting, and the random seeds. But yeah, that's where you go. Now, Dark Age of Man, technically the manuscript's, for the most part, done. We're just proofreading, and we're making sure there's not some things we need to make sure we need to get in and out. And that's going into the publisher. We start laying in the art and everything for the book. And then that will eventually be available on Drive-Thru-RPG. We'd like to do print on demand, of course, hardcover, softcover. And then we don't know if we're going to have a digital version or not. I don't know what we're going to do there, but we haven't decided all that. But I'm hoping it'll be out in a few months, but we'll see, right?
Nice.
So all the art's done. The manuscript's done. It's just now it's the book layout, and it's going to be proofreading and some final tweaks. If there's a couple things we want to take out of the rules or add to the rules, but it's basically ready to go. But as far as where it's available yet, not yet, and I can't even tell you when. So we're not going to do a Kickstarter or anything. We're just going to publish it and go from there. We've already paid for the art. We've already paid for Anthony did some line editing for us. I paid Anthony, and I've paid our book editors getting paid. So we're just kind of doing this as we have money and out of our pocket, kind of thing. So yeah. But yeah, that's it. That's really all I can say. If you want to see me run a Savage Worlds in the next month, you want to watch out for that. I will be running that hopefully in August, right? That sessions I'm working on. So yeah, I'm really digging Savage Worlds. So it's one of those games, and this is the thing. I haven't found the perfect game, but I like all kinds of games.
There you go.
Right? Depends on the mood I'm in, man. If I want D&D, there's nowhere better to get D&D than Moldvay, right? Just go dig up an old D&D book and play some D&D, right? So yeah, Savage Worlds might be one of those few that takes care of all those genres really well.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
We're gonna take up Scott's. Scott's talking about running a fantasy game for us. We'll be taking him up on that.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see Savage Worlds do some. I really believe Savage Worlds is perfect for Conan.
Oh yeah, you have there's a whole setting. Beasts and Barbarians. It's Conan the Barbarian.
I mean, I can't. I mean, it's perfect. Absolutely perfect for Conan. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But anyways, thank you, Jason, for
Thank
hopping on.
you.
We're just hitting about the 1 hour mark. If you guys like this episode, you can definitely check out Jason on his channel. If you and also if you like this episode, you can send us an email at rpsmartpeople@gmail.com, or if you hated this episode, let us know on Twitter at rpsmartpeople.
I hate smart people. Yeah, listen, if you got some complaints, send them to I hate smart people.
Yeah. We're not there, but at least somebody will get it.
Yeah, but let them send it to some place that don't exist. Fuck them.
Yep. And next week we'll have our special episode of Session 0 of Curse of Strahd, where we're putting our money where our mouth is, and actually going to be running a 5e campaigns, considering how much we've complained about it in the past.
Wow.
Yeah, and then after
you guys do this face to face? Are you guys all in the same place?
Oh no, I'm in Canada and they're in the U.S. and different places. I think Scott.
I thought Scott was in the U.S. for sure, but yeah.
So we'll have that to look forward next week. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Jason.